Okay, so here we are. Welcome to room 2. Where's the let's check the numbers. Oh, we've got 3 participants. That's us. Yeah, I mean, Emily just.
But you're not letting them in, right? They can just they'll just automatically join.
That's right. Yeah, it's just that they won't be stopped from joining. You know, when you click and you can't join, but yeah, we'll be able to join. Let's hope we don't get any Turkish teachers, Gabriella.
Do you know what? When I joined that session, I also thought, why they're not in Herbert's session? I thought, why so many, were they bored or something? Like,
Emily is suggesting you can prepare the break slides and activate the video once you welcome people. Yeah, exactly. That's one. And then Gabriella, you'll copy the links to the other workshops in case people are in the wrong place.
Okay. At the moment, we haven't got anyone yet.
No, well, let's wait until we get somebody.
Where are you, Gabriella? Are you in England as well?
Yes, close to Cambridge, actually, yeah.
So all of you are in England, apart from Františka?
Yeah. Emily, she's in France.
Emily's in Lyon.
France.
Yeah. Yeah, Emily works from home. Yeah, we have quite an old-fashioned situation with Cambridge-based regional colleagues. We have an office, the office in Prague, which, I mean, you probably know that it used to be near your school.
I was in it, though, the new one. The new one's really nice.
Yes.
Small, but it's really nice.
Yeah, I haven't been there. We set it up last summer, and last trip I had to Prague was, well, I think it was probably the last trip that was possible before the lockdown in about
the last
February.
Trip you would want to take here, I think, until
definitely
next year.
Now it's bad, isn't it?
It's been bad since October. There was no point coming here really from September onwards.
Yeah, but
it's getting better though. It's finally getting better. It took us 6 months, but it's finally improving.
But you've had nighttime curfews, haven't you? But some things have remained. It seems to have been possible to continue with quite a lot of activities.
And people have, and
which is presumably why. Yeah, exactly.
This is why it's been so bad. But
yeah.
So I'm really jealous now that like my mum is a barber and she's opening again on like the 5th or she's in Scotland, not in England, but it's like the 5th or the 12th, and I know maybe it's the day after Easter actually, so the 4th. And I haven't had my hair cut for months. So this is the one thing I'm really jealous about actually. I don't mind the restaurants and pubs, but I just want a haircut.
That's exactly what my wife and daughters say, but I don't have that problem. They can cut my hair.
My partner actually cut my hair 2 weeks ago, so now I have to do it like that because it's not straight at all. It's just, I regret I really gave him, you know.
Well, it was brave of him to try. I wouldn't dare try and cut my wife's hair.
Supposed to cut 2 centimeters, but it was more like that.
Oh no. Oh dear. But I mean, you even see, you know, TV presenters who clearly haven't had a haircut, or else their hair color is, you know, growing out, and it's quite a leveler, isn't it?
A nightmare.
Yeah. Well, I think as of Monday, we have a relaxation, don't we, Gabriella? We can go into people's gardens.
Yeah.
We can have, we can have 2 families meeting up outside, which in practice is what almost has happened, because, you know, we have on occasion met another family and gone off into pairs, which we're allowed to do, you know, because you're allowed to go walking or running or something with one person at the moment.
I like that in the UK people actually think about the rules.
That's right.
Here I think it's just like, oh, there's a rule for this. Oh, I didn't know this. So, it's nice that in Britain people are actually
It could be that it's because we live in a place where people follow the rules a bit more. I mean, I think if you're like a block in a student accommodation or something, you might not find quite the same thing. It's a kind of maybe. Also a bit of a life stage thing probably, isn't it? Mind you, I know there's quite a lot of, you know, I know people, I've heard of people whose like parents have had the vaccination, and then they've thought they can just do anything, and then they just start, you know, meeting each other and doing normal things again. I just read. Yeah. Oh, hello, welcome. Welcome to room 2. This is where Chris is going to be speaking in 11 minutes or so. People are coming into the room now, Gabriella, so I think we'll perhaps... Hello. Blanca, hello. We'll start on at the top of the hour. So, you know, for anybody who wants to go and fetch coffees and drinks, yeah, time for tea. Time for tea. Gabriella was sharing the photograph of her coffee earlier on this morning when we were up at 7 o'clock, weren't we, Gabriella?
Yes, yeah.
You need your caffeine shot at that time of day. I haven't had my coffee yet. I'll have one probably when you start talking, Chris.
It's a good time for it.
I forgot to take a glass of water for my intro earlier on, but, because sometimes if you talk for a long time, it can get quite dry, can't it? So here we are in room 2, the breakout room. It seems to be working. People are now joining us. I'm assuming that Herbert has finished his session and that people will be going off to fetch their refreshments, going for a quick comfort break and then be back in the room. We've actually got 10 minutes, but what we're planning to do is to show some videos, which will probably take about 5 to 10 minutes, I suppose, Gabriella. And so it will be just like a waiting room in a very smart, well, I don't know what kind of place you would wait for that you want to wait for teaching help. I'm not going to say doctors or dentists, obviously, because we're not giving that kind of surgery or support to people's teaching, are we, Chris? Anyway, so we're going to run some videos. So let's do that now, and then we'll come back in 5 or 6 or 7 minutes, and we'll do the introductions, and we can start on time at 10 o'clock Central European time, or 11 for those of you that are coming in from the Baltic states or anywhere further to the east. Okay, Gabriella is putting in the chat, aren't you? In case you might be thinking that you're in the wrong room, then we're going to post the links to the other session. Hello, Inga from Latvia. Nice to see people. We have the links in the chat for the other sessions if you're in the wrong place. We're going to play some videos now for a few moments, and then we'll come back in 5 or 6 minutes to introduce the session with Chris. Okay, Gabriella, do you want to go ahead and do that? Okay, we'll see you all shortly. Go and help yourself to a nice drink.
This is where our story begins. For over 400 years, innovation has been at the heart of everything we do. But the world is changing fast. And how we learn is changing too. This is where our story begins. For over 400 years, innovation has been at the heart of everything we do. But the world is changing fast. And how we learn is changing too. So we never rest, never stand still. And we wouldn't be who we are today without our extraordinary people. Using our resources wisely means we can invest in the future of education and research. Working without boundaries in over 150 countries across the world.
I'm based in the New York office. I work with colleagues from all over the world, and it feels great to be part of a truly global team. It's amazing to know the projects I've worked on are helping people in Brazil, Mexico, China, South Africa, Spain, all over the world learn new skills and achieve their goals.
Technology is changing the way people learn, and we are leading the way by creating the products, innovative services and solutions that will respond to the real needs of teachers and learners in the 21st century.
Every day I make decisions to shape and design a product. These decisions are based on a lot of research and feedback. This helps us to design the best product we can for our customers around the world.
Understanding and supporting customers, wherever they are, is at the center of everything we do. Working together, we are able to try out new ideas that will make a real difference.
Unlocking people's potential with the best learning and research solutions. Inspiring people all over the world to expand their horizons and achieve their goals. So join us on our journey, and together we can achieve our vision of a world of learning and research inspired by Cambridge.
So, what brings you here today?
I am here to tell you. Here to tell you why it has always been my dream. It's always been my dream, my dream. Be my dream, my dream. I am here.
So, what brings you here today?
I'm here to tell you why it has always been my dream to fly. Hola! See?
Very nice. Thank you very much, Gabriella. Well, it's just coming up to 10 o'clock Central European time. Welcome to you all. I hope you found your way to our room 2 in our ambitious plan to offer a wide range of different workshops. This one is going to be practical activities for young learners, speaking exam preparation with Chris Bain, who you can see on the screen there. If by any chance you don't want to be here, I hesitate to say, Chris, but if you really are in the wrong place, then we have posted the links further up in the chat. So if you need to move to another room, it is possible to move around. So please do that now. And we'll just, I guess we want to wait until the top of the hour. Good morning to you all. It's nice to see people talk in the chat. I don't know, Chris, are you going to be able to monitor chat in your session? Probably not. It's not easy as a speaker. I think that face probably means not. But Gabriella and I will be keeping an eye on the chat. But what I would say is that if you have specific questions that you would like us to answer, either potentially at the end of the session if there is time, I think there may be a few minutes, but depending on how how the time goes, we can perhaps take a few questions at the end of the session. Alternatively, if you do write into the Q&A box as opposed to the chat, then that does mean that what you write is recorded, and we will have the opportunity to return to it and try to address your questions later on. So I think that we're virtually, I missed most of, as Chris and Gabriella did, due to some Zoom technical challenges. So again, finally, if you're here in the wrong room, then there are links above in the chat to the other 2 workshop sessions. But here we have practical activities for young learners, speaking exam preparation with Chris Bain. Welcome, Chris. Chris is a CELTA and Delta qualified ELT teacher. He's the Assistant Director of Studies at Accent International House in Prague, which is literally just up the road from the Cambridge University Press, or where the Cambridge University Press was until 12 months ago. So it's a well-known school. I've been there a few times myself, a lovely part of the city. And Chris is going to be talking to us about speaking young learners. He's a Cambridge speaking examiner, so he's really well placed to talk to us about offering some practical activities to help with young learners' preparation for the speaking exams in Cambridge. So Chris, thank you very much. Over to you.
Great, thanks very much, Duncan. Okay, I'll just share my screen first. And can you just let me know everybody can see it okay, yeah?
It's there, it's perfect, Chris. Thank you so much. Yeah,
perfect.
Ready to go.
Perfect. Okay. So thanks very much for the introduction. Yeah, just to reiterate what Duncan said, my name's Chris. I work at Accent International House in Prague, where I've been in Prague for around 5 years. All of that time working for Accent. And I just wanted to start very briefly. It's probably most interesting for the Czech teachers here, or the teachers who are based in Prague, but just a very fast 1-minute overview of what we do at Accent. We're a very strong teacher training school, and we offer a lot of teacher training courses, including CELTA and Delta. And also for the teachers who are here, if you're working with children, we also offer the IHCYLT. We have IHCYLT courses starting potentially in May and also potentially in July. So if you are interested in taking any young learner teacher training courses, please just go to our website. All the information's there. Everything you need is there. And we will also be having our first ever online conference on the 15th of May. So if anybody is interested in joining this, again, all the information is on the website. So this is the teacher training side of things. And then more relevant to today, we are also very large, I would say, exam center. We offer Spanish, German exams, and also the full suite of Cambridge exams. So this is starters, movers, flyers, CET, PET, B2, C1, and C2 exams. So if anybody, again, is interested in taking any exams, or they have students who'd be interested in taking exams, all the dates, all the information is on our website. And so I said this is relevant for today's session because the talk we're doing today is going to be about the Cambridge YLE exams, so mainly focusing on starters, movers, and flyers, and how we can prepare the students for taking these exams. I think there's been a real increase in the last few years in the number of young students, especially in the Czech Republic, who have been taking these exams. And even if we're not doing a specifically exam preparation course for young learners, I think it's really useful to have some activities in any class with children that will help prepare them for these exams and get them ready for them. And today I really wanted to focus on speaking because I think speaking is a very challenging part of the exam for young students. It's the part that many of them are quite nervous about. And so really the more help we can give them before they go to do it, the better. So in this session, I'm going to present 6-ish, because there'll be a few extra things thrown in, speaking activities. And I tried to choose activities which directly relate to different parts of the YLE exams. So really tasks that they will be expected to do in the exam. So they allow for work on multiple skills or grammar. So I really believe that the best kind of activities are the one that test or practice a range of skills. So all of these are directly related to speaking, but they also try to include some other either reading or writing or listening or some grammar work. They provide meaningful use of language, so it's not some abstract usage, but it's really like directly relevant and meaningful for the lesson. Can be adapted for online and offline. Everybody knows, I think at the moment, we're never sure, even sometimes week to week, whether we're going to be online or offline the following week. So it's good to have activities that are easily adaptable. Are fun and engaging, because obviously it's vital that the students are having fun and that they're not getting bored. And then really the last point for me often is the most important one. They're really easy for the teacher to plan and prepare. So I think they're relevant, they're really meaningful, but they're also not really complicated activities that you will have to spend a long time getting ready for, and try to keep it as simple as possible. And also for this reason, it's as student-centered as possible. So these activities are not things the teacher will have to do a lot in, because the students will be doing most of the work. Okay, and then, yeah, like Duncan said, maybe there'll be some time at the end for questions if anyone has any, but otherwise, let's get started with the first activity. And this is really connected to a part of every YLE exam, which is the kind of asking and answering portion. So the students will always be asked, doesn't matter if it's starters, movers, flyers, some simple questions about themselves, which they need to answer. And okay, we can practice this just by every lesson. You know, we can ask them some basic questions and they answer it. You could get them to ask each other some basic questions, but there's not much to this. It's quite simplistic. So one activity that I have thought for this, it's a craft activity, but really one that's practicing grammar as well. So they're also practicing the question forms. So they are practicing how to ask, as well as getting this relevant practice for how to answer. And a really simple craft activity is just making puppets. Let's say we can say you can use puppets. Yeah, so I quite often with students, they maybe don't always want to answer questions about themselves, or they get really bored or jaded. If I ask a student, you know, every week, what's your favorite food? What's your favorite sport? Okay, I am helping them prepare for this exam, but they might become really bored with this, like answering simple questions about themselves all the time. So I found that using puppets, like real puppets that you have in the classroom, can be fun as well. So just getting them to ask the puppet questions and the puppet ask them questions for younger students, you know, the 7, 8-year-olds. This can be really fun and engaging, but it only goes to a certain point. So this is just very simple. Yeah, it's paper plate and the lollipop stick. It's something they can do also online, because it's really easy as long as the parents know in advance. You know, they just need a paper plate. They don't even really need actually, they don't even need a paper plate. They could just do this with a piece of paper and a pencil. Yeah, so as long as they've got a piece of paper and a pencil and some sellotape, they can really easily make one of these. And it's a good chance also to review, for example, parts of the face, different ways to describe hair. So you can get them to make these little characters and describe them to you. So using all the different ways to describe, you know, color of your eyes or what your hair is like. And so they're reviewing this during the lesson, they're making the craft project, they'll have fun with it. And then also they have this small, let's say, puppet, which they can then use to practice back and forth, asking and answering questions. And it's really quite fun for them, to make up really silly things, and much more natural, I think, to do it for someone else than to do it for themselves. So when you ask them a question, I think often they'll spend a long time thinking like, okay, what is my favorite food? But when it's like a puppet, they'll say something quite silly, they'll make up something quite creative, and then they can just ask the next question to the next student then. So they're getting to be quite silly, it's getting to be quite fun, but also they are practicing what we want them to practice, which is asking the questions and also answering them. So I think if you have a puppet, and you can try it with a real puppet, it's great. But I also think it's really nice to have crafts where students can make just very simple things like this, and then use these to practice these questions. And it allows them to practice more vocabulary. Yeah, maybe their favorite sport is swimming, but their puppet's favorite sport is football. So they're practicing a lot of different vocabulary points as well through using these. Yeah, some really like common questions that they might be asked in a Cambridge exam would just be things like, what's your name? What color is your hair? What do you eat for lunch? What sport do you like? So all these questions we can be reviewing with them, and they can be coming up with answers for their puppet. This could even be, I'd say, like a year-long project. You can start at the beginning of term with this friend puppet that they would have in the class. And then as you're learning the vocabulary through the year, you can add in these questions and get them to use these to talk about it. This obviously works for young students. Yeah, so like I said, 6, 7, 8-year-olds, but maybe if you're thinking, okay, fine, this is great for the young ones, but how about the flyers, the older movers students? Yeah, I agree, this is a little too childish maybe for them. But another idea for older students is just making their own board games. So it's also a craft activity. It's also something that you can do quite easily online, because all they really need is paper. In the classroom, maybe it is easier because they can decorate it more. You can maybe have them draw some pictures on the board, but you can get them to practice different kind of common questions. And this is such a good activity to have for example, when you have 5 minutes at the end of a lesson and you need to fill this 5 minutes with something. Okay, great. So we bring out the board game. They can move around the board and ask and answer the questions. And it's a bit more engaging, I'd say, than just straightforward, ask your partner a question and answer it, and then ask them a question. Okay, it's more of a game element. It's more competitive, maybe. You can set a time limit, see who can do the most questions in a minute, and they would actually put the questions onto the board. I think that what could be really nice here, this board is obviously finished, it's been written in pen, but when you use post-it notes, so if you just have the template for the board, and you can put post-it notes on the squares with questions, then it's easy if you think, okay, these students, they've answered this question, what's your favorite animal, so many times. Okay, we'll take it away and we can replace it with a sticky note with a new question. So I think that sticky notes on these board templates work really well too for practicing the vocab as you're going through the year. So it's really good revision for the question forms. It's good speaking practice. And also it's easy to move forward with the vocabulary. Of course, they could just, if they used pencil, rub it out and put something new. But yeah, I think that sticky notes work really well too. And it's a good chance for them to be creative. Also online, I don't know if any of you have used this WordWall website before. I think this is a really good website for the exact same purpose. So it's not a board game, but you can have students put these kind of common exam-related questions onto a wheel, and then you just press start and it will spin and they will answer the questions. So again, it's just adding a game element. Let's say for the younger ones, we're adding a kind of fun element through the craft and through having this person that they're creating a story about. And for the older ones, really we have more of a game element to it. So it's just a bit more fun, I'd say, for these kind of questions, and we're getting good practice in. Okay, so this was the first thing, just the basic one, let's say, just asking and answering simple questions. Let's move on to, for example, in the starters exam, I'd say one of the most important things here really to look at is prepositions. Yeah, so the students will be asked, for example, on a picture, put the robot next to the table, or put the carrot on the book. They'll be asked something with prepositions. So it's really important that the youngest students, I say, get some good practice of manipulating objects and using prepositions so they're ready for this part of the exam. So one activity that I really like, it's a sort of back to the board style activity, and it's practicing grammar. So if anyone's not sure, back to the board, it's a very common, I'd say, vocabulary practice game. So two students can't see the board. The teacher writes a word on the board and their classmates should describe to them what the word is. So it's something you can do in a pool, or you get wet, it's a sport. It can be anything like this. I have a slight variety on it because for the youngest students, so the starter level students, it's going to be very, very, very difficult for them to describe a word. But if we're practicing prepositions, one very simple activity is just to take, for example, a ball into the class and a table and have two students, you can have two teams, sitting here, and behind them, you've got the table and the ball, so they can't see it. The other students in the class will be very quiet, and you put the ball somewhere, so on the table or under the table or next to the table or between two books, it could be anything. And these two students who can't see it, they will try to guess where the ball is. So they can say it's on the table, and their classmates will say, no, it's not. They can say, is it under the table? And the first person who guesses where the ball is will get a point. So really in the starters exam, it's more listening based. Yeah, they're told where to put it and they put it there. But this is a really good chance to internalize it for them, practice their speaking skills, and really remember what the prepositions mean so they know for when they go to the exam. And obviously, once you've done this a few times, the students can do it themselves. Yeah, so this student guesses correctly. So now she comes behind, two new students are here, and she will put the ball somewhere next to or under or between something, whatever you're practicing. And then she can kind of act as the teacher. So it's really nice for you to step away. You don't have to always put it somewhere, but she's manipulating it. So she's taking the ball and moving it somewhere, and she's getting this practice, or he or she's getting this practice of actually moving the things into the right place. A really easy way to do this online, I would say, is just to keep the same principle, but you can just use a piece of paper like I have here, just a scrunched up piece of paper which resembles a ball, let's say. And it can be anything, you know, their mobile phone or their hand, and you're just doing the exact same thing. Okay, so you have two students, you say, okay, I'm going to put the ball somewhere. Okay, right, now you can guess, and they will guess where it is, and one of them will say, it's on your hand, and I'll say, yeah, it's on my hand. Okay, now can you scrunch up a piece of paper and put it somewhere? And another two students will guess, and they'll show it. So it's quite easy to replicate online, I would say. Not maybe using a ball and a table, but just using some paper or a pen, anything they have there. And as long as they're manipulating it, yeah, as long as the students are moving it so that they're getting this practice for what they need to do in the exam, and also they're getting some speaking practice because they are guessing, yeah, is it next to, is it on, and the other students will be answering them. So I think, yeah, very, very simple, straightforward activity, one that students really enjoy, and one that you can vary up quite a lot as well. So if you want to practice vocabulary, you know, so the ball and the table is a very simple way to do it. But if you want to bring more vocabulary in, because in the exam, they have to do quite strange things. Yeah, it's like put the apple on the giraffe. So, I mean, you can bring in flashcards and have them manipulate different vocab items. It really can be anything, I would say. Even things that are not very normal or natural, it's fine, because this is what they'll do also in the starters exam. It's not so straightforward as always being on the table. So these two activities, I'd say more maybe are geared towards starters level students, the youngest students, where we're really focusing on just making them comfortable with asking and answering questions and with using prepositions, which is the main thing they'll do in the starters exam. Now, if we move up a little bit, so maybe towards movers level students, and one of the tasks that they have to do is this odd one out. And I think if we look at an example here, okay, probably it's very easy to say that the fish is the odd one out because well, it's very clear from the pictures. But then when we have to say why it's the odd one out, it becomes a bit more challenging for students. So these are so straightforward, you know, they can point very, very easily, generally, at which one's the odd one out. But they need to be kind of comfortable with this language then to say why it's the odd one out. Yeah, so we want them to speak. They don't just point at the picture. They need to say something about why it's an odd one out. So another activity for this that I use just to try to get students comfortable with the language that they need to use is just very simply a race activity, a game, let's say a race game, which practices writing and spelling, which is also really important for mover students for example, the reading and writing part of the exam. And I think everybody's used these. Yeah, they're very, very common. We have board races where students will come up to the board, you'll give them some marker pens, and they will write words on the board in a kind of race, let's say. We often use it with just one category, I would say. So you're having a lesson on animals. The students come to the board, we divide the board into 3 teams, and you say, okay, 2 minutes, write all of the animals that you can think of. And they will do it. Okay, this team has the most, so they're the winner. So it's really fast paced, and we are just getting out the vocabulary for the lesson. But how about if we tried something similar, but really practicing this odd one out element? So you have 3 categories on the board. So animals, fruit, and clothes, you have 3 teams, and they're going to put all the vocabulary they can think of on the board, right? So we've got on the board very clearly a list of all this different kind of vocabulary. And then you can check the spelling. Obviously, we can look at some vocabulary work. And then you can say to students, okay, I'm going to say 3 words. Okay, let's just simplify it a bit. In the exam, it's 4 pictures, but we can simplify it a bit. We have 2 teams, 2 students have a board marker. Say, I'm going to say 3 things, and the one thing that is odd, you need to circle it. So they need to find it. This is practicing reading a little bit as well, yeah? They need to find the word and circle it. So I can say bear, elephant, banana. Okay, so they know banana is the odd one. They need to find it and circle it. And then you can say to them, okay, why? And you have this language here to help them. They might be able to do it anyway, because this is quite a simple example. We'll come to this in a moment. But just getting them to say, you know, oh, it's odd because it's a fruit, and bear and elephant are animals. Great. So we got them to actually produce the sentence. We've got them to compare the 2 things and use the language to do it. So often they'll know, you know, banana, apple, orange, but do they know the word fruit? Yeah, and if they don't, it's going to be hard for them to describe why it's different. And this is maybe at the most basic level. Here, for example, okay, all of them are animals. So it's not really possible for us to use it so simply. But we can take it a step further. So say you're practicing with them sports, vocabulary, and you're doing do, play, and go. Very similar idea. Yeah. So this is also kind of practicing grammar as well. So you'll have the 3 parts of the board. They'll do a board race, write all the words they can think of or words from the book, any way you want to do it. And then you just do the same thing. Yeah. So you say, okay, just circle the one that's the odd one out. So gymnastics, athletics, football. Okay, and they'll circle football. The first one to circle football. Okay, why? Okay, because you play football, you do aerobics and gymnastics. You can take this a step further and actually use the pictures if you want to, so that they've started practicing it. But really, this is just a, you know, fast-paced, like movement game. You know, they're up on the board, they're writing, they're having to circle things, they're practicing writing and reading, but you're also getting them used to this language, okay, this is odd because it is this and other ones are this. So it's a really good introduction, I'd say, to using this kind of language for students who are maybe not used to it. Maybe they've never had to do this before. So I think you'll notice this when you try it with students for the first time. I'd say, you know, they can say this one, but if you say why, it's really difficult for them to explain it, why it's a different one. Not all of them, of course, but for many. So yeah, just a very simple activity, I would say, to start getting them used to this idea of saying this one because this and this. And this is a kind of bonus activity, actually, that I recently did online. So the board race, obviously, we can't do online. You can still do elements of it. You know, you can open a Google Doc. If your students are quite good with technology, they can go to the Google Doc. You can recreate a board race very easily on a Google Doc. But one activity maybe for younger students that I found works quite well, I've done this with my starter level students, is just having students choose a number. You say, okay, so we're doing animals this month. So name 3 animals that can climb a tree. Okay, and they will say the 3 animals, I don't know, monkey, squirrel, and what can climb a tree? A cat. And then the next student, okay, the next student will go and they will choose number 5. Okay, and that can swim. And they will say dolphin, etc., etc. You know, probably it's better actually that I don't delete this, because then what we want them to do really after then is you can do the same thing in principle. Yeah. So looking at the vocabulary here on the PowerPoint, so what's different? Monkey, squirrel, dolphin. Okay, they say dolphin. Okay, why? Because it can swim and monkey and squirrel can climb a tree. You're just using the vocabulary that's here, you know, on the PowerPoint. It doesn't need to be so abstract. It can just be straightforward what they can see on the PowerPoint. So I think even for younger students, this is quite a nice way to review the vocabulary you're studying and get some practice in. Okay, so right, this is movers, and we'll continue a little bit with another activity that's common in more than just one exam for Cambridge, is spot the difference. So we have 2 pictures and there are some differences, 5 differences, and the students need to find them. Again, very easy visually. Yeah, it's very easy to see, okay, the bottles, yeah, I can see they're different, but now how do I explain that? How do I use language to show what the difference is? And one activity I really enjoy with this, and it's one of my favorite ones, it's a drawing activity, but actually practicing reading, which then leads nicely into this, finding the differences. So you have 2 teams, they are on opposite sides of the classroom. So you have team A on the left side of the classroom, team B on the right side. You have 5 or 6 sentences, quite simple, basic sentences, and you put them up around the room. The students in the team, one of them needs to run and read the sentence, come back and tell their partners, and their partners will draw a very simple picture of what they say. So the first person runs and reads, there's a house and a garden. Okay, they go back and tell their teammates, and their teammates will draw it very quickly. Then the next one goes and reads the next sentence, comes back, and they draw this again. And you can see there are differences. So when team A and team B are finished, they will have slightly different pictures. But what we're doing here, I think, is when they are reading it and telling their partners, they're really practicing this structure which they need for comparing the differences, just there as there are. It's a very simple structure, but really getting the practice in so that they're using it. So they're going to read it, they're going to say it back to their team have to hear it and internalize it and draw it. And then once the pictures are finished, and you say to them, okay, there are some differences between them, can you find out what the differences are? They already have the language that they need to make sentences to compare them. So it's not just one student says 2 red flowers, And the other says, one red flower. Okay, we want them to really make a clear sentence here. And if they don't, so if they just say 2 red flowers, it's really easy for you to just give them the piece of paper and get them to actually, read out the sentence, just so they're getting used to it. They're getting used to this habit of doing this. And I think it's much more engaging than what you could do, of course, is just give them 2 pictures and have them practice their is there are, for example, and then just compare these 2. I think here they've had a chance to see and use the target language before the activity, and it's in a meaningful way because they're in a team. They have to draw something. The drawing is really kinesthetic, and they have something at the end of it, that they made. So again, it's really important for the speaking practice, but you've got so many other things happening in this activity that are building up to the speaking part of it. So I think it's useful for lots of different elements. Again, it's difficult online, but not impossible. So I think this is one activity. You can use the chat function, the chat box. If you're using Zoom, for example, it's very easy to send sentences to individual students. So I won't send a message to everyone, but I can choose the students and send the sentence to them, and they will have to draw the picture. They can do it just on their table at home in secret. So you say, okay, guys, read the sentence and then draw it. And we've made it simple enough that we think they will understand the sentence, no problem. So they read it on the chat box and they draw it. And then at the end you say, okay, and then actually you have it in the chat. So if they say dog in garden, you can say, oh, in the chat box, look at the sentence. Say, okay, so there is a dog in the garden. And then from this, all you need to add in is in my picture. Because if we look at the example here from the exam, so just in my picture, there's a ball. In my picture, there's a boat, or there isn't a ball. Just using the negative. It's not always so easy as this, so here we need to know in front of and behind, but there are other ways we can practice this, but it's just developing the habit of them making a full sentence so that when it comes time for the exam, this is really internalized for them and they can make long sentences. And like I said, it just, I think, much more meaningful for them that they did the picture themselves, they made it, and now they're talking about it. Okay, so this is spot the difference activity. Now, another one that I think is really tough, because I think that students really need a model for this, is telling a story. So I think when we ask students, okay, look at the pictures, what's happening here? It's, again, very simple. We visually, we can look at it and say, it's very clear what's happening. There's not really any ambiguity. But then if students are going to tell for 2 minutes what's happening here, it's quite tough for them to know all of the words they should use, what tenses they should use. And so I think giving them a model from the teacher is really, really helpful. And for this, we really need keywords. So one activity that I like, again, in this kind of task is a word grab activity, but then this is practicing listening as well. So just as an example, and again, this is something very easy to replicate online. If students are at home, you can more or less do the exact same thing, but just they'll be doing it individually rather than in groups. But so, for example, we give them, so for example, we'll give them, or we'll dictate to them some keywords from the story. These can be like useful expressions, phrasal verbs, kind of grammar points, anything that they might need to tell this story. And they'll write all the words out on some pieces of paper. They'll put them in the middle of the table. If you want to do it like a team game, I think this works really well. So you have 2 students together and all of the words and expressions are on pieces of paper on the table between them. And you say, okay, guys, I'm going to read you the story of what happened. And I want you to listen. And when you hear one of these words being used, grab it. Okay, you need to be faster than your partner. And then you just read it at probably quite a slow pace, okay? So, for example, you know, Nick and Anna look out the window. Okay, so they have to grab look out. Yeah, the first person to grab it will be the winner. So they have to listen very, very carefully to your story as you're telling it so that they can grab the words first. Yeah, online, I think really, really easy to do it, but just individually. So they all write the words on pieces of paper. They can show them to you so you know they have them. They put them in front of them in the table, and then you read the story. And just instead of being a team game, the first person to show you the word in the camera so they can get a point. So they're playing individually rather than in a team, but it's still like fun for them because there's a game element to it. There's a reason for them to listen carefully, and they're going to hear how the story is being told. One element that I think you can add to it to give it maybe more of a challenge is to give them some words that you're not going to use. So it might be that you don't show them the pictures first. Maybe you just tell them the story first, because if you show the pictures first, they'll know that these words are not in the story. But if they haven't seen the pictures yet, so you could say, okay, I'm going to read 10 words to you. And I just want you to write them down. And then, okay, so some of them will be in the story and some of them won't be. Some of them are not going to be there. So you have to listen really carefully to see which words are in the story and which words are not. And they just have to grab as they hear them. Okay, so once they have the words, so now they've heard a model, you know, they've heard you telling the story already, and they've got the words there, these key words that they are going to use and the key tenses that they're going to use. You can ask them, for example, okay, do you remember the order that you heard them in? Can you put the words in the correct order? Okay, now can you try to tell the story again? It's kind of like a dictogloss in this sense. Yeah, they've heard you tell the story. You do it very simply, you know, very, very basic language to tell it. So they can kind of listen and internalize it a bit. They have the key words, so they know what words they need to use, and then they just start telling the story, or recreating the story maybe that you've told. They can change it, of course, you know, if they have some other way of expressing it, that's fine. But you can say to them, okay, I really want you to use these key words when you tell the story. So it's really just a way, I'd say, of structuring this for them so that they have an idea that it's not just possible to say, aha, Nick and Anna look out the window, teacher go to the tree, get cat. Okay, we want a bit more than this. Yeah, so we're giving them a model so they have an idea of what we expect. We're giving them some keywords and then asking them to do the same as what we just did. Yeah, so I just told you the story like this. Can you do it yourselves? So I'll kind of warm up for getting them used to doing this, to storytelling. And it's a really good chance to look at what kind of verbs and tenses we would expect them to use as well. Here it's just present continuous, but so you're saying, you know, even if you can use 2 times in your story, this one, it's good. Yeah, getting the practice in. Okay, and then, right, we're on to the last one. So the number 6, sorry, number 8. This is from the Flyers test, and also this is from the KET exam, the information gap task, where students have to ask questions to other students. We're kind of going back now to this asking questions that we started with. At the beginning, it was just asking and answering questions. Now they need to actually make the question. So they will need to say, what's the name of the restaurant? What does Robert like eating? So they really need to be comfortable with how to form questions here so that they can ask the teacher, because the answers, they can just give the answers. Yeah, so this is fine, but they need to be able to make the questions for this part of the exam. So a final activity that I really enjoy for doing this, it's a project activity, but practicing writing and also reading. So this is going back maybe to the spot the difference, the pictures, and just making it a bit more meaningful. So I think we can give them this and they can do this activity, but they have no ownership over it. Yeah, it's just the teacher giving them something and they use this something that the teacher gave them. But how about they make something themselves? So let's say this context we're working with, restaurants. So I think a very nice project, very simple project. It doesn't have to take a lot of time. You know, really they can do it in 15 minutes if they need to, if you just want a really quick project. Is just to say to students, okay, you're going to design a brand new restaurant. So what's the name of the restaurant? What food do they serve there? What time do they open, close? And now create a poster displaying the information, right? Really fast project, yeah? So they will need to put some information on there. This is where the writing comes in. And the reading's going to come in a moment. So, and they can see the questions as well. So you'll give them just this on a piece of paper and say, okay, you need to answer these questions on the poster. So again, it's this exposure. Yeah, they see clearly what the questions are, how they form the questions, and they can start to internalize it a bit. You could even do this actually, like the previous activity where you put the questions around the room. They have to run and read them and then tell them back to their partner. Anything that's challenging them, you know, to really look and engage with the question, I think is a great way to do it. And so they've designed the poster. Okay, say, great, thanks guys. Can you all give me your posters? And again, this idea of putting them up around the room. And then we can give them another piece of paper. Okay, so we've got the questions again, but these key words that we need to make the question are missing. So this is our chance to practice a little bit. Okay, so how do we make this question? So what is the name of the restaurant? So we're practicing with them, you know, what should be here in these spaces? And then you can say, okay, I'm going to give you a partner. We have all these posters around the room, all these different restaurants. You need to ask your partner about one of the random ones around the room. So for example, you can say, this team, you're going to use this poster. It's neither of their posters. Yeah, so it's not something they've worked on. It's a totally new one. And they have to ask each other the question. So what's the name of the restaurant? And one student must go find the information and tell it to their partner. And this also can have a race element to it. Yeah, so the students need to ask the question to their partner needs to go and find it, come back and tell them, and whoever can be first to answer all the questions is the winner. Again, yeah, it doesn't exactly replicate what they'll do in the exam, but it's just getting them started with this idea of, okay, I need to put some, or because I'm sure anyone who's an examiner for flyers will have the experience where the students will just say, what name restaurant, food served there, and it's like they are not even aware maybe that they need to put words into the spaces. So just getting this idea into their head really early, okay, we need to make a question somehow from these keywords. They have it somewhere in the back of their mind because they've already seen it. You've given them the model and you can help them if they're struggling. But again, it's related to something concrete. It's not related to some page from the book or something you photocopied. It's connected to these posters, this project that they've done themselves. So they have more ownership over it. And so this is really it, I would say. These were the 6 main ideas that I had, and just a sort of general summary of what they were and what level they're appropriate for. Like I said, the questions is really for anything. And then I'd say some of them are more starters or movers, or can be movers and flyers, or flyers and kit. But I would say all of these activities fulfill my original requirement, which was that they practice multiple skills, not just speaking, but speaking is the ultimate goal of the activity. They're meaningful for the students. Students are involved and student-centered. And they are practical. They're giving them what they need in order to do the exam. And all of them, I would say, it can be done online also. Even this final one, so I never mentioned it, but even this final one, if you have, you know, slightly older flyers and they're very good at using technology, they can easily make a poster on Padlet or somewhere, and then you can share the links, and they have to use the questions to find the information online. So it's totally possible. So all of them, I'd say, are practical for online or offline. So this is a very brief summary. I really hope you found something here that was useful and something that you could try with your own classes. And thanks very much for coming to the presentation on a Saturday morning. I'm sure everyone's tired of using the Zoom by the end of the week, but yeah, thanks a lot for coming, and thanks for Duncan and Cambridge for having me.
Well, Chris, thanks very much. I mean, it was very popular. We had some fantastic comments in the chat there. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at them, but
I'll maybe have a look now.
If you want to feel good about the session, then just go back. Everyone was really praising you and taking a lot home from it. So thank you for that. We don't really have a lot of time. There's a break now.
I timed it perfectly.
You timed it perfectly to avoid the questions. But there was one question that I said that I would answer live, and I didn't really mean to answer it live. I meant to answer it by writing, but I clicked the wrong button, which was, is there any provided resource to find sample questions for starters with the flyers?
I mean, I think I put the link here. It's this Cambridge English Resources for Teachers. There's lots and lots of example tasks there, lots of papers, and it's the website that I use for finding example tasks.
And I would also highlight the World of Fun, which is on the cambridge.org website. So that's worldofFun.cambridge.org, which is really more like tips and ideas, a bit similar to the ones that you've done, I suppose, here today, and materials to help with preparing for young learners. And also there's, if you go also on the Cambridge website, there's a World of Fun app, which is a little bit of fun for mobile, called Word Fun World App. So that's just a couple of other tips. And there's one more question. What can we say to the parents of kids who are just starting to learn and do not make progress as fast as the parents would like them to? Well, that's really a question for a teacher, Chris. What do you say to parents of kids who aren't progressing as fast as they would like?
I think that students, especially like very young students, you know, they progress at their pace. So I think it's difficult for parents to accept this, you know, that the child's friend is going much faster than they are, for example. But I think that we need to meet expectations. Yeah, there's no language school, no teacher in the world, I think, that can guarantee your student on this day will be at this point. And I think that if we are claiming that, it's a dangerous road to go down. So I think that parents generally need some advice maybe from the teachers, that their expectations are a little high. And I think generally they respond to this. Yeah, they understand also it's not a magic click your fingers and the student can do this. But sometimes parents, I think, need to be told this. They don't intrinsically realize it.
This is an issue for teachers in any subject, isn't it?
Yeah.
And obviously part of teachers' training is to, you know, make sure that the communication with parents in the appropriate channels is a positive experience for both.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, well, look, it's time for a break. We've got 15 minutes until the next set of workshops, and we have in the chat we have the links for those workshops. In this room, Gabriella, I hope if you're here, you're going to play some different things to watch in the short break. But please go and have some refreshments. And you know, once more, Chris, I'd really like to thank you. That was such a popular session. I was watching the numbers of the participants even growing during the session, and we got over 300 there. So
great.
that's a big audience, I think.
I'm glad my Wi-Fi held up for the whole.
Well, that's
my biggest panic.
Very true. I had the phone ringing and the dog barking and all sorts of things at the wrong time. So it can happen to us all, can't it? Okay, so Gabriella's going to start with the videos, and thanks all. And you know, pop back here or go to the sessions by following the links in the chat for the next workshops, which start at the top of the hour, which is coming up to 10 in the UK, 11 in Central European, and midday in Baltic states. So thanks very much. I'm signing off now, and we'll see you again in 10 minutes or so. Thanks so much.
Learning English is about having the confidence to communicate wherever you are in the world. It opens the door to a lifetime of enriching experiences and opportunities. At Cambridge Assessment English, we help people learn English and prove their skills to the world. How do we do this? Well, learning a language can be a long journey, so it's important to have clear goals to aim for along the way. Cambridge English qualifications provide a clear path for improving English language skills, all the way from pre-A1 starters to C2 proficiency. They focus on real-life situations and test all 4 language skills: reading, writing, listening, and speaking, so learners develop the skills they need to succeed in the classroom and beyond. Cambridge English qualifications are based on extensive research into how people learn languages, and our research shows that preparing for our exams improves learners' English. Each exam is targeted to a level of the Common European Framework of Reference, or CEFR, an international standard for describing language ability. So, what are the benefits of designing our exams like this? Well, it helps teachers plan the learning journey in stages. By providing regular milestones, teachers can support their students one step at a time until they master the English language. The exams can be easily integrated with the school curriculum and are tailored to each learner's age and ability, making learning enjoyable and rewarding. Working from one goal to the next gives students the motivation and focus they need and makes it easy to see how they are progressing. Each exam builds on the skills from the previous level and increases confidence step by step. Because our exams are targeted at the CEFR levels, teachers, parents and learners know what they need to do to prepare for each exam and what skills need to be developed. It also helps us to offer a wide range of teaching materials, exam preparation and free resources so that teachers and learners get exactly the right support. Our exams for younger learners help them develop their language skills in a fun and practical way. They're a great way to motivate students from a young age and prepare them for our more advanced qualifications. As students get older and develop their skills, they move up the levels until they reach C2 proficiency, which shows they have mastered the English language. Higher level exams like these are recognised by thousands of universities and employers, opening up a world of work, study, and travel opportunities. Cambridge English qualifications help millions of people learn English and prove their skills to the world, and lay the foundation for their future success.
Hello! Welcome to my latest video. Thanks for joining me. Today we are going to be looking at the new levels of official exam preparation for 2021 brought to you by Cambridge. First up, great new content and design with the new editions of the best-selling Complete and Compact. Compact first now has fun grammar animations straight from the page.
Hi Anne, do you still play tennis?
This is already really popular in the groundbreaking exam series, Open World. So, good news everyone, there's a new level for Open World, C1 Advanced, taking students even further with real-world English and exam training. And as it's Cambridge, you are confident all the language and exam training is totally up to date and relevant to your needs. And now, the really exciting news, brand new digital packs on Cambridge One. Practice Extra makes grammar and vocabulary practice more dynamic. Games and exercises you can use whenever and wherever you want. And the new test and train exam practice gets students ready for exam day. Exam tasks, hints and tips, learners use these as they want, or teachers can assign them. Now, teachers, test and train means you can also set a timed practice test. That's a taste of the real exam. And you will love that all these resources are in one place, on Cambridge One, with the ability to easily check your students' progress and scores. So that's all from me. As you can see, lots of new exciting ways to prepare for exams this year. Have fun! If you have enjoyed this video, please like and share. See you next time!
Pre-A1 starters, A1 movers, and A2 flyers are the first steps in a learner's language journey. Children between the ages of 6 and 12 can take these exams to start learning English in a fun and practical way. The exams for young children are interactive, colourful, and activity-based, so it doesn't feel like they are taking an exam at all. They make their early learning experience positive and build their confidence step by step. At Pre-A1 starters, children can spell their name and say how old they are.
L-U-C-Y, I am Nate.
A1 movers is the next step in the journey. Children at this level can answer questions about their everyday life.
Who do you play with at school?
I play with my friend, Julia.
The next level up is A2 flyers. Here they are able to build and link sentences with words such as because, and, then.
What did you enjoy most about today?
The trip to the museum because I love science.
They are also able to talk about things they have done. There is no pass or fail. Instead, children receive a certificate with shields that recognise their achievements in all 4 language skills. They are a real celebration of what children can do. After taking the qualifications for young learners, students can go on to develop their English by preparing for A2 Key for Schools. At this level, a learner can start having conversations with English speakers.
Can I have a hamburger?
Pre-A1 starters, A1 movers, and A2 flyers help children around the world take their first steps towards learning English and lay the foundations for their future success.
Hello, well, welcome back, everybody. I think we're going to be shifting over. I think, Anjay, are you here?
Yes, I'm here, trying to share.
I can't see. Oh, you can't see me. Oh, this is getting too much. It's the constant.
My video has been stopped, so you probably need to allow me to show myself again.
Yes, well, take your time. So it all went so well to begin with. There we go. I can see you, Anjay. I can't see myself. Am I here?
Yes, you are.
I am visible. That's a relief. Okay, so not such a slick switch over to last time. Your presentation is currently not in slideshow mode, Anjay.
No, it's not. No, now it should be.
It should be. I can see you've clicked the button, so there we have it. That's fantastic. Okay, so well, we've got a couple of minutes to spare. So, Anjay, welcome to you. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for joining us after even teaching this morning, as I understand.
Yeah,
it's a busy day for you. So, Anjay is an old colleague of mine and friend from many years back. I think it must be nearly 10 years ago since I first met you in Vilnius. It's quite some time ago, isn't it?
Yeah.
And basically, you're a very experienced trainer and teacher. You have your own business. You do a lot of training. You're a CELTA. You're an MA in linguistics. You're a former Cambridge employee and Cambridge contributor in many countries around Europe, Middle East, and even Asia. And I think that we're really going to look forward to your session, which, as I understand, you're going to sort of explore the kind of difference between the requirements of real world language and the requirements of advanced exams, and how to guide students through that kind of boundary between the use of language and success in exams. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so I think we're...
Well, the key message that I'll try to convey today is that there's no real boundary between real life and exam preparation. It's only in our minds and in our perception of the world. Where I've recently been studying a lot of interesting materials about the brain. And it appears that our brain needs to separate things and needs to set clear boundaries in order to make sense of the world around us. This is just for our brain, this is a dangerous world to live in. Our ancient brain, the brain of the reptile,
the
says,
simple things.
Yeah, scan the environment and run if necessary, because it's a dangerous place. And we still live with this perception. So we try to set clear boundaries, but sometimes they're in our way of getting beyond something that we're currently doing.
Yeah. So obviously, for those of you who are here, I can see that we've got 200 or so people in the room. Just a quick word to say that I hope you are in the right place, but if by any chance you have come into the wrong room, then Gabriella has posted the links to the other sessions in the chat. And we welcome chats during the session. But if you want questions to be answered at some point, then please type them into the Q&A box, and at least that way they are recorded. The chat tends to pass by rather quickly, and I don't know whether, Anjay, you're in a position to be looking at chat, but it's quite challenging, I know, when you're presenting. So
yeah,
we'll be keeping an eye on the chat. And
I think I'd rather leave about 5 to 10 minutes at the end to be able to go through those questions, because we've got quite a lot on our agenda today. So
yes, well, take the time, because I mean, if questions do come into that Q&A session, then we can actually deal with that either now, or else we can deal with it in the Q&A session with Herbert at the end, which follows these sessions. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to you, Anjay. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you to the participants. Just a quick reminder, when you're in the chat, if you make sure you're writing to all panelists and attendees, I think that's the terminology, to make sure that we can all read what you're writing, and Q&A box for anything that you want to be preserved for more formal answering. Okay, Anjay, welcome and thank you.
Thank you, Duncan. All right, so let's look at our agenda first of all. The route I'd like to take with you today is we'll first look at learners' interests and expectations. In other words, learners' motivation to learn language, especially thinking of this level, C1. Well, by the time you're ready to pass an exam at this level, you've probably answered as a learner all your questions about why I'm doing this. So learners clearly have expectations about what they want to learn in your exam preparation class, but we shouldn't forget about the humans in the room who also have their own interests, and they have two sources of motivation, as you know, external and internal ones. So we are there as their teachers to provide them with a bit of external motivation, and well, they should also spend time clarifying their internal motivation, why they're doing this. We'll come back to this after a while. Then we'll talk about exam preparation as such, the process, the elements, what's in the mix. We've all been there many times as teachers, but still we'll have a look at what can be slightly improved in the process to help learners achieve what they expect to achieve in our course. And probably the most difficult part of this is how to challenge our learners to push themselves further or beyond the level of their current achievement. So let's start with learners' expectations and interests in today's world. I'm going to be using examples from the C1 level of Open World, our new exam preparation course. So all the pages and the screenshots that you're going to see come from the C1 level, illustrating the points that I'm trying to make here. And I'd like to start by quoting John Lennon. And this ties in nicely with the first part of my talk today. There are no clear boundaries, and there should be very clear boundaries between life and exam preparation. And life is what actually happens to all of us while we're busy making other plans for our lives, such as preparing for and passing a certain exam. So life never stops. It's everywhere around us, both outside the classroom and in the classroom. We're all human beings. We're interconnected. Even online, we need to see and feel that connection because we need to rely on others in our lives, not just on ourselves. And if we think that life is part of the process, which it is, then we should probably try to make learning more relevant to life outside the classroom as well. So even in exam preparation courses like Open World, we need to remind learners that they're not just preparing for a certain level of the exam, but they're also going to use the language that they're learning to communicate with real people in real situations in the real world. And the way we can do this is we can actually give them exposure to real world English that they're going to use as people, not just as learners. And we can also set a separate agenda for them through the life skills sections as this one. So life competencies, lifelong skills taken from the Cambridge framework for life competencies here are also part and parcel of the course. The reason we need to set this separate path for our learners is that at some point they might lose motivation for various reasons, and sometimes they keep asking themselves and us, their teachers, this question: why am I doing this? What's the real value of all this learning beyond the exam? Yes, I'm going to work hard to pass it, and then what comes next? Well, next comes real world. All right, so the framework that I'm going to introduce to you in just a few seconds is our way of explaining that learning languages is part of life competencies, and life competencies can serve as a useful framework for learning anything, including foreign languages. So combining the English abilities that we hope to be able to help our learners develop for exams and life, we will have to go through the different parts of the framework, such as alongside learning the language, we'll need to help our learners develop creative thinking, critical thinking, learning to learn, because after our course, they need to be more self-reliant and able to continue without our help whenever necessary. There's also communication in the classroom and outside the classroom, and we need to also talk about how communication happens. And sometimes when you talk about life competencies, the 6 competencies that you see here on the screen, they sound a bit abstract before you actually look at the set of behaviors that help us explain how creative thinking or critical thinking manifests itself in the real world and in real life. So, for example, instead of talking about you need to develop your critical thinking skills, we should focus on the set of behaviors that show that critical thinking, our critical thinking or our learners' critical thinking is actually improving. So if you're able to understand and analyze links between ideas or evaluate others' ideas, arguments and options that you're exposed to, or you're able to synthesize ideas and information from the sources that you're studying, then this is actually a sign of developing critical thinking. So it's useful to point out that language can also be used, for example, English as the language that our students are learning at the moment for various purposes, can also be a vehicle for developing these competencies, and it's everywhere. You can't analyze or understand or evaluate or synthesize ideas without using language. So it's all interrelated, interconnected. But I'd also like to stop and talk about what a competency is, because when we talk about competencies, there are a lot of misconceptions about competencies, and actually this diagram shows clearly that a competency is a mix of knowledge, skill, and attitudes. And then when you think about what knowledge is, try to ask yourselves this question now: how would you define knowledge? How would you define skill? And how would you define attitude? I'll just give you a minute to think about this. Talk to yourself quietly, or you may also want to use the chat to write your ideas. Try to give a clear explanation to yourself, first of all, of what these 3 things are to you personally. Right. Now let's look at the definitions. All right. Knowledge is what you need to know to do something well. The key element of this definition to me is that knowledge should enable you to do something. Knowledge without enabling us to do something well or better is not as useful. We don't really try to retain as much of it as we would if we knew that we would be able to do something better using the knowledge. So skill is what you get from practice. So you need to practice in order to get a certain degree of mastery or fluency in using this competency. And then certainly an attitude is a mindset. It's how you look at things, how you look at learning, how you look at your own ability to achieve something, how you, what your attitude is to learning and learning as a process and learning as content, and also learning as a collaboration. So basically our attitudes shape our view of the world, and this is where we develop our knowledge and skill. So these can be very powerful filters for how we perceive and what we intake from the world around us. So moving on to exam preparation, how do we help? We all have our own recipes, but I'd say these three would be the most useful for me. So in order to get somewhere, we need a clear map. And as soon as we have a clear understanding of where we're going with this, what the destination is, we should also take our first steps. So if we expose learners to different question types in the exam that they're going to tackle soon, we'll have to show them the different elements, the bits, the steps that they need to take on their way to their destination. So as many exam question types as possible, so we're familiar with what's coming, and we are well prepared on the day of the exam. Then it's not just the knowledge and the skills that you need to develop in order to tackle the different question types. You also need to think about strategies how to deal with each question type in the most efficient way, and also thinking of the timing that you need to be aware of, and be ready to answer all the questions in the exam paper within the time limit that is given. So you'll certainly need strategies in order to save time and just do what's expected. And finally, well, the more practice, the better, because we talked about skill as something that needs to be practiced for fluency. So the more you practice, the more opportunities you have to practice, both in the classroom and outside the classroom. The more likely it is to be ready on the day of the exam. Then if you look at how this can be integrated into an exam preparation course, then we certainly need bits of training materials like this, showing learners different parts of the exam and different parts of the papers, and practicing in as many ways as possible, exposing learners to task types that look exactly the same as the real ones in the exam, but also training them to be careful about the instructions and reading what's expected from them. And what we probably need to remember here is that it has to be a systematic route. And then exposing learners gradually to different exam tasks makes it possible to actually reduce the level of stress in the end when the time comes to actually sit and do the exam. And also knowing that, well, you can do it, that it is possible. Once you've done it successfully, as you were preparing for the exam, then you know you can do this. And now I'm talking about the third element of the competency, and that's attitude. If you have the right positive attitude based on your previous experience, because you've been there, you've done this before, then you're more likely to be well prepared for the day. Then another useful part of exam preparation is certainly giving learners exposure to real tasks that they are likely to see in the exam itself. So exam focus sections usually help us well, actually experience something that we're going to experience in exam settings beforehand. But sometimes we just need to make sure that we know a bit more about the exam than the task format. And this is when such extra boxes like exam facts or exam tips are also very useful. Then, well, if you know the format, if you know the strategies, then, well, there's one element missing, and that's essential, because you're going to use language and show how well you can use language in the exam. Because well, if the language and skills are not there, then well, knowing the format and knowing the time limit is not enough. So you also have to be well prepared, because the language is the focus of all the papers. Although if we look at the structure of all exam papers, they are structured by skill, but the language is the vehicle for the skill to actually show, to display that you can do things. But the language is the essential element here. You need to be able to express ideas clearly and also structure them well. So you'll certainly need grammar and vocabulary at a certain level. And it's important that examination materials, we can rely on the level of the language that's presented to learners through the activities. We need to know that they're carefully selected, pre-selected for the learner, and we're actually learning and teaching the right language that is relevant to the level we're working at, and they are pre-selected on the basis of something that is tested and researched well. So Cambridge books and authors of Cambridge titles use a lot of databases collected over years, where we exactly know that the vocabulary or the grammar structure that's on the page in a course book, it has been selected using databases such as, for example, the English Profile, where we have evidence of, these are selected from student papers, past papers, and we know that it's not just our idea that learners should know this at this level. It's what learners have been able to use correctly and consistently in various levels of exams. So the materials in the book should, they should also help learners to develop their language and skills alongside exam preparation, because you need both, all right? And we also want to make sure that learners spend some time on their own learning outside the classroom, because we can't possibly do everything together. There's no time for this, and we can't possibly guarantee that everyone is equally involved in class and they're all learning the same things at the same time. We are exposing them to the same things within the 45 or 90 minutes of our exam preparation class. But what happens in their heads, is a mystery to us. And that's why we need assessment as well, to be able to understand where we are with this and what our progress to date is. But we also want to make sure that learners become more self-reliant, independent, and do something on their own. So in this particular book, for example, we have grammar sections where there's a code that learners can scan that takes them to a short video explaining a grammar point. So this is basically something that we often call the flipped classroom approach, where you have a chance to go through some theory and find out how grammar works, let's say, in your own time. And you do it very flexibly, because you can do it on your mobile at any point whenever you have some time, and you can do it anywhere. So you choose as a learner when to do this, and then actually use the classroom time more effectively, so that you can actually find out what parts of the grammar, for example, or vocabulary that you studied independently still need to be practiced or explained further by the teacher. So you come ready to talk about this and practice this, and then improve together. All right, and then finally, the challenge here is how to push themselves, for our students, of course, how to push themselves beyond the level of the exam. And it's a bit tricky. Here, we're talking about C1. At this level, you've learned enough to operate successfully in this world in the foreign language. And there's probably not enough motivation to push yourself further, because you know that, well, your English is good enough to communicate ideas. You're learning now in order to pass an exam that you're also taking for a reason. So learners, I think at this level, know that they're going to pass the exam for a very practical reason, because they need to do this, because this is part of the curriculum or part of the learning process that they're going through. And for some of our learners, it's also a clear idea that they're going to use the certificate, for example, that they gain if they pass the exam successfully for their future. So some of them will need to pass an exam at this level in order to leave school, and others will treat the C1 exam as their gateway to higher education or better work or whatever. But C1 is actually the level when you keep asking yourself this tricky question: do I need to go further because I'm already good enough? And then what's this C2? Why should I? And then to help you discuss this with your learners, because some of them may actually feel well, I shouldn't say demotivated, but not motivated enough, or not clear about their aims at this level. And they'll be asking them those questions. So we should probably use this golden circle idea to talk about this very openly with our learners at any point, especially at the beginning of a C1 preparation course. We need to clarify expectations, and we need to clarify our learners' beliefs, first of all. So a simple question is, why are you doing this? What's the purpose? Is useful. As soon as you know why and you've clarified expectations, we can already talk about the process and the results that we all hope to achieve. And as you know, there will be different ideas and beliefs at the beginning of the process. The why question will give us a lot of a variety of answers. And that will also mean that our process will have to be structured in such a way that we try to meet as many of those expectations as possible. Some of the learners will just need to pass an exam, and that is it. That is the destination for them. For others, this will be the beginning of another process in their lifelong learning. So I think it's also useful, after clarifying our beliefs and expectations at the beginning of an exam preparation course, to actually involve learners in planning the process, how we are all going to get there, and setting their own agenda alongside the plan that we have for them as teachers. We're always pretty much clear, because we've done this before, how we're going to take our learners to the destination. But it's probably more challenging always to help learners plan for themselves their distinct, separate route alongside the course that is going to take them to what they also expect on top of the aims and objectives of our course. And then the results will all be different. You've heard from the previous speaker today that, well, you cannot expect the same results from everyone, because it's not just the teacher's job to organize and facilitate the process. It's also the learner's job to get actively involved in the process of preparations. And at the end of the day, it's all going to happen in our learners' minds, in our learners' heads. They are going to learn something. They're going to pass the exam. We're only there to help them. We're only there to facilitate the process, to help them on the journey. So how can learners possibly push themselves further without us reminding them of what they need to do for the course? Because when we talk about motivation, there are two sides to it. We've spoken about this internal and external motivation today, but there's also motivation has this very clear purpose. If there's no clear purpose, then you can't build the path to this. So learners need to be very clear about their aims, first of all. And we can only provide some extra space for practicing the language for the level that learners are hoping to achieve at the end of our exam preparation course. But we need to try and challenge them to go beyond, explain that learning will never stop, especially if they go down this path and they keep using English for their work or studies. They will always be learning something new, and becoming more self-reliant is just as important for our learners as preparing for the challenge ahead. So the way the course books, the Open World treats this is what we can do as teachers is expose our learners to tasks that are beyond their current level. So we can just challenge them in the classroom with tasks that show them the next step ahead in their journey, what they'll have to be able to do if they want to go further. So they realize that there's still something they might not know, and it'll provide the right level of challenge for them in the future, and probably even make them curious about what's next. Once I've done this, once I'm happy with the results, I've passed the exam, what next? Now you know, because you've been exposed to a bit of extra challenge on your way to your exam. And also, unless we point out that these exist, learners sometimes, especially those that are over-reliant on their teachers, they know it's in the book, but they wouldn't go there. So we'll probably have to let them do some of it. So this is also an interesting way to organize learning in the classroom in such a way that learners can get exposure to some theory before we actually practice this together to find out how well we're prepared. So the grammar reference or the writing bank or the speaking bank can be used in two ways. One way of doing this is to give our learners extra practice after class once we've practiced this and identified some gaps in their current knowledge and skills. But we can also challenge our learners to be prepared for what happens in the classroom next time, so they can actually do this before we practice the grammar bit or some writing micro skill or speaking skill in class. So being curious is always good, especially at this level, because you're already using English meaningfully for other purposes than just exam preparation. And what learners appreciate these days is also online materials, but we as teachers want to make sure that these online materials can also be used in the classroom. So the digital pack that comes with this course makes it possible for learners to do some tests on their own, but a lot of these tests are also suitable for classroom practice. And what's important is we as teachers have access to all the data about our students' success rates, and we can compare them. So we can always give very clear and structured feedback to each of our learners individually. So we can encourage our learners to do some extra practice in their own time, taking the route that they need individually to fix certain problems and identify gaps in their current knowledge. But we can also use the test and train facility here to practice the skills necessary for the exam using the format that resembles the real tasks, and that is based on the same standards. So learners are going to be exposed to the type of tasks and exactly in the same way as they would in the real exam. Well, except for the task itself, everything else is pretty much the same. The format, the skills, the language is there. So, well, you feel better on the day of the exam. All right. And one more thing that I want to point out before I finish is the English profile. A lot of teachers know about this. A lot of teachers have used this before, but it's just like lifelong learning. This is something that is always in progress. It's developing. The developers of these two tools, the vocabulary and the grammar profiles, are still collecting data and still updating the materials on the database here. But the way we can use this as teachers in order to know if the language that we are exposing our learners to is appropriate for their level is we can just refer to one of these databases, for example, the vocabulary profile or the grammar profile. As you see, you can filter all the vocabulary that is stored on the database by level. So for example, you can either choose C1 or even combine a few, or you can choose each level separately, or you can combine C1 and C2, for example. So you see that certain words, certain vocabulary is something that learners have been able to actively and consistently use in Cambridge examination papers before. So that's a clear indicator that our learners should also know this. But we can also pave this road ahead and say, so, well, on top of what you should already know for this level, this is what's coming. And so you can explore new meanings of the same words that you're already familiar with, or you can pick up new words. And it's always good to know for the teacher if the language we're practicing is relevant and not just in the book. And there's a similar tool here, as you see, the grammar profile, which indicates which structures are suitable for this level. So you see the links below, and you can always explore these to make sure that what happens in your class is also well researched and based on real world knowledge of what learners are able to do. So we know that we can also suggest certain activities to our learners because we know that they're useful. All right, and we've still got about 5 minutes left, so I'll be happy to answer your questions now. And I'm sure there are quite a few in the chat now.
Anjay, thank you so much. Fantastic, inspirational talk. There were a few questions that came through in the Q&A, and there was one of them which was asking for some, which may be challenging for you to do now, was asking for some exact activities, some precise examples of activities for motivating students to go beyond what might be expected. You know, the suggestion is that really you need something very concrete to help that, and just asking students to do that kind of thing seldom works. So I mean, is there anything that off the top of your head, the kind of tasks that you might think of?
Quick and easy answer to this would be, well, if you have the book, then it's already there. We have those push yourself sections that expose learners to something that's beyond their current level, but not too challenging in order to demotivate them. So it's just a teaser to arouse their curiosity. But you can also use ready-made activities that are available on the Cambridge Assessment website for language learners. So in the resources there, you also, by the way, you also have if you go to the examination center's website, the Cambridge Assessment website, then there you can find a special section for learners, and they have short activities for all the levels of Cambridge exams.
You mean practice makes perfect?
Point your learners in that direction, and copy the link and share it with your learners so they can spend 5 to 10 minutes learning on their own whenever they feel like online, for example, or past papers, or all sorts of trainers that we also have available. So it's just a collection of tests that are of the same format as the real ones. But they don't just test, they also train learners for the exam. So they give a lot of strategies and tips on how to tackle each part and each question more effectively.
I put the link to Practice Makes Perfect in case people don't have it.
Yes.
The question about
Practice Makes Perfect, which is both for teachers and learners.
Yes, that's right. I mean, there's a question about English profile as well. Now, I'm afraid, embarrassed to say, I don't know the answer to this. If you need to be signed up, or if you have to register for English profile to use.
Not anymore. Now it's an open database. Well, in the past, the idea was to collect as a database of contacts, teachers who would like to share their learners examples of language use with Cambridge. But now I've checked this recently, and it's all completely open. You just use the links and you get the tool. It's absolutely free.
And I put the link in there as well.
Yes, and you can also be sure that authors of our books use them to select the points that they're going to include in their course books. That's important.
And probably just finally, we have a question from Vanda, who's talking about the C1 level, I guess, of the exam rather than the book that you were looking at. Open World is very academic. What kind of writing activities can you suggest, please? That's rather an open question.
I'd use Write and Improve.
Yeah.
For sure, and I'm a big fan of this tool. It's online, and you can also set up your own account as a teacher and add your own activities for your learners that are more related to what you do with them in class. But there's also a whole array of activities that are pre-prepared for different levels. So Write and Improve is just Google for Write and Improve, and I'm sure you'll find this tool. Well, where learners can, well, that's important for two reasons. The way I find this particularly useful is once you've done the task, the system can give you instant feedback on your first attempt, and then you're given a chance to improve, and then you run it through the system again. And then the way the system works is it compares your writing, your learner's writing, to standard writing that is expected at this level. And it also compares your learner's writing to past papers and writing samples that successful learners have been able to produce. So you know that it's all checked and tested against someone else's good examples of writing, and it feels as if there's a bit of AI behind it, but it's actually a huge tool that is combined with all the databases back at Cambridge, where there's a lot of evidence collected over years, and we have samples of learner writing, and that's all measured against the best examples. And so learners know how much they still need to do, and they can take multiple attempts before they submit their writing to you, and you are able to look at this as a teacher and give them feedback that is more personal and individualized.
There's just a quick question about Open World available online. It's not available as an online course, but there are online components that Andrzej was talking about, and there's a basic ebook version, and there's online practice. There is a test and train application within that, which is basically practice for examinations. This is a brand new book. There may be an interactive ebook coming at some point. Right now, print-based, but with digital pack associated with it. And also probably worth mentioning the Presentation Plus software, which gives the teacher the option to display the pages on the screen with an interaction to audio, video, etc. Okay, well, I think probably we're just about over time, and it would be nice for people to have a break. If we haven't dealt with any of these questions, then we will carry them forward perhaps to the session which Herbert will join Andrzej in 12 minutes or so, where there will be a chance. I'm not quite sure how many questions we'll have. We seem to have answered a lot of questions now. There may be others that have come in during the morning. We have some ones that were submitted in advance as well. So I'm sure it'll be an entertaining session with Herbert and with Andrzej. And then after that, we'll be having a little quiz and some prizes, a raffle type bit of fun towards the end. So thanks for joining us, and thank you very much, Andrzej. That was a fantastic session, tricky at the advanced level, and to motivate and to keep things moving.
Yeah,
so
my last piece of advice would be start with how. clarify the purpose, and then everything will just, well.
And one thing that you can say right at the end now, Anjay, is your own website page, which you could perhaps put in the chat.
Yeah, we're also going to.
We are recording the session.
Yeah, the recording of the section. So
yeah, I should say that. I mean, you know, what will happen is that everybody who's attended will receive an email. I won't say on Monday, but hopefully by the middle of next week, and that will also include attached documents with any links that have been used during the sessions. It will ask for feedback, and it will enable you to request a certificate of attendance and also recording of the sessions that you want. So that will come into your inbox in the next week. So there will be opportunity for further dialogue and discussion if we can't get to your questions today. So I think that probably is the end of this session. As I understand, we will now move back to the main room for a short break, and then in 10 minutes or so, we'll be starting the Q&A. So Anjay, you will rejoin back into the main room, as I will. Yeah, so and hopefully we'll see you all there in a few minutes. Everybody may need a time for a tiny little break. So thanks ever so much for the session, and we look forward to seeing you in a few moments. Yeah. And if Anna, you asked a question about open world available in Hungary, well, it certainly should be available in Hungary, and we'll make sure that we contact LibreBooks, who's one of the distributors that's been involved with this session today, and make sure that it's available for ordering. Certainly it's on our local price list and can be made available. Okay, thanks very much, everybody. See you again shortly. Bye-bye.